Haver pointed to a slightly larger opening higher up the cliff.
That is where the scent trail leads. It looks like they crawled up the wall there. The trail is only a few hours old, so there are definitely undead in there. I don't know if it's the main nest, but if we squeeze in, we'll find our target.
Got it. Ellie, can you tell me which of these cracks connects to the main passage?
Ellie drew her wand and crouched down, drawing something in the dirt. She poked the center of the symbol she'd drawn, and John felt a small ripple shoot out from it, vanishing into the ground. Ellie nodded her head and pointed to a long crack that was only around a palm wide.
This used to be a larger opening, but the earth spirits are telling me that someone closed it up. It leads to a wide cave.
Katrine stepped closer, looking down at the symbol with interest.
What was that spell?
We'll have time to exchange knowledge later. For now, let's focus on the task at hand. The sooner we're done, the better. We need to get this entrance open.
You want it open? Simple enough.
Katrine lifted her hands and thrust them out before John could stop her. A raging storm of wind manifested itself at her palms, spinning around and carving deep into the cliff. The blades of condensed wind chewed apart the stone, sending shards of rock flying as the opening was forced apart. Lifting his shield to intercept a flying stone, John shot a glare at Katrine, who was standing there, a guilty expression on her face.
Katrine?
Hearing the grim tone of John's voice, the former empress hid her hands behind her back, taking a quick step to the side. The sound of smashing rocks faded as the spell fell apart, but everyone in the party knew that the damage was done. Weapons were drawn, and everyone was alert as they stared at the dark forest around them. As the last rocks fell, the forest regained its silence. An unnatural sense of stillness settled over the party as they held their breaths, ears straining for the slightest noise. Any element of surprise they had possessed had been blown apart under Katrine's powerful wind spell, and for a moment John felt as if he had returned to the early days when he and Katrine had adventured with others who had been summoned with them. Even then, Katrine's rash personality often landed them in dangerous jams, and it seemed that her time as Empress hadn't managed to dull her propensity to act first and think later.
Sorry.
Ignoring her whispered apology, John kept listening for any sign of enemies. Without breath or heartbeat, undead were one of the hardest monsters to detect until they moved, but what he was even more worried about was the magic user behind them. Though he had no personal experience controlling undead, he'd memorized the grimoire he had recovered from the necromancer who had ambushed their caravan, and it contained spells for sharing the senses of undead minions.
Don't worry, Lady Katrine.
Hugo got cut off with a glare from Marcos.
Be quiet.
For almost 3 minutes, the party stood quietly, not moving even an inch as they waited to see if the racket had drawn any unwanted attention. When he didn't hear anything, John looked over at Haver, who shook his head.
There's nothing in the forest.
And the cave tunnel is still clear.
Good. Seems like we squeezed by.
Seeing John turn toward her, Katrine held up her hands, giving John her best smile.
I know. I need to slow down and not just act without thinking. I'll listen to what you say and only act when you tell me to. I'll also be careful not to damage the walls or any pillars I see, and I will make sure I'm avoiding allies as well.
Ellie turned to Haver.
It's almost like she knows what John is about to say.
Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of stories packed into what she's saying. But what are the chances she actually sticks with it?
I'd say low.
Hey, I can hear you, you know.
Ellie looked over. Ellie saw that Katrine was sticking her tongue out. John looked toward the cave entrance Katrine had carved out.
Fine. Let's just get going.
Oh, do we have to? I'm not going to lie. I'm really sick of caves and tunnels. I feel like every time I go into one, I nearly die.
But you haven't died yet, have you?
Sure. But third time's the charm, isn't it? I have a really bad feeling about this.
The idea that bad things come in threes is an old wives' tale. In my experience, bad things come in at least sets of 10.